tab, and I need to see where it is. And that's not what I want to share. I want to share a tab. And that's not what I want to share. So let's see. Hold on one quick second. Why am I not able to get my tab? Hold Shift to select multiple windows. Oh. Well, let's see. Let me go to this real quick. And then let me move this. And the first thing I want to do is do a brief announcement. Can everybody see this? It says Biden-Harris administration recommends award. I noticed that the esteemed Amy Vandeveld, our NTIA representative here in the state of Missouri, is on the call. Hi, Amy. And I was going to go through a quick overview of this announcement, but heck, I don't want to steal your thunder. Would you be okay if I put you on the spot and you provided a quick overview of the announcement that was made a couple days ago?
Sure, Tom. Hi, everybody. I hope you're all well. I don't have a ton to say because this isn't really my thunder anymore. It's the digital equity teams, but I do know that we made this announcement, and I believe that Lead for America was a grantee that has some reach in Missouri, according to the press release. So this is the first of what I think will be 3 announcements. And I believe the intent is to get these all announced as soon as possible, but I don't have any direct intel. I know that sounds odd, given that we're one agency, but the digital equity team has been heads down and conducting all of these reviews. So I literally haven't seen or talked to any of my digital equity colleagues since they've been working on getting this all situated. So it's great news. I think that for those of you, I know we have a lot of newer people on the call, but for those of us who've been digital inclusion practitioners for quite some time, it was a nice mix of some known names and some agencies we've never seen before. So it was a mix of different awards.
Great. Well, and Amy, thanks for jumping in. I'm sorry for putting you on the spot.
Okay.
I know that a number of people have asked me what this announcement meant, because in the first instance, if I go back to the top, it was a recommendation made by the
Correct.
Biden administration for 24 organizations to receive awards totaling 250 million. Now that 250 million is just 20% of the overall pool of funds that were part of this digital equity competitive grant. And I know that at least 3 or 4 organizations with ties to the Kansas City region made applications to that competitive grant. And this particular award is a recommendation. It's not a guarantee that these groups will receive the funding, but it's a pretty strong recommendation that hopefully will be seen through on. And like Amy was saying, there's 2 pretty known agencies, the NDIA, the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, representing a total of 11 states, is recommended to receive 25 million. And that's spread out kind of differently with organizations in each of those states. And as Amy was saying, National Lead for America, whose application came through the state of Kansas, has some representation in both Kansas and Missouri, but their award that's being recommended is $12 million spread across 13 states. So again, to Amy's point, it's a good indication, but it's not a lot of not a lot of detail. But I just wanted to make you all on this call aware of what's happening, because we're all kind of waiting with bated breath to find out what impact the new election and the new administration is going to have on the ultimate disbursement of these federal grant funds. So that
Yeah,
was
I apologize. I don't have anything more. And also, sorry, I always forget to put my Kansas hat on here because Melinda's not here today. But yeah, Kansas and Missouri both represented here, which is exciting and of course, as we know, necessary. But I sorry I don't have anything else I can add right now about exactly what it means, but there will be more information. You know, guidance is forthcoming as we're
great.
always saying at NTIA. So stay tuned.
Well, and we're grateful to you, Amy, for staying engaged and joining us in this call. And I think that's the overall philosophy that as a group, we're hoping that we can spread among ourselves and among all of our peers that in this space that, regardless of what happens with the federal government, the federal governments shift all the time. It's our responsibility and obligation to stay dedicated to the goals of digital equity and digital inclusion work. So we're going to continue, with that persistent dedication to making sure this happens. So thanks so much for continuing to join us. I'm going
Sure.
to share. Yep. Somebody have a comment? Okay, so I'm going to have one other screenshot I wanted to share with you. Let's see if I can get that on here. Okay, can you see this? Says Shelby, the Schools, Health, Libraries, and Broadband Coalition. That's a national group that advocates for a variety of digital equity goals, particularly as they pertain to what's referred to as anchor institutions. Large organizations that have a relatively permanent presence in each community throughout the country, schools, healthcare organizations, libraries. Also, newer organizations like housing authorities and community centers are now kind of falling under that umbrella. I serve on a committee at Shelby that's called the Anchors for Digital Equity. We have a monthly call. Anybody can go on the Shelby website and you can sign up to join Shelby if you like. I also wanted this group to be aware that our own Carrie Coogan was just elected to be a board member of Shelby, which is located in Washington, D.C. It's not a new job for her, but it's a volunteer assignment. But I think it just speaks to Carrie's level of recognition nationally in the digital inclusion world and the degree to which Carrie and to a large extent the Kansas City Public Library has continued to play a significant national role and particularly its role in helping to lead the coalition efforts. So with that being said, there's currently a challenge that the Supreme Court is hearing a case questioning the constitutionality of the Universal Service Fund, USF. Now, that's the fund under which we've been able to have programs like the ACP, the Affordable Connectivity Program, and Lifeline before that, and other measures that the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, has been able to implement through the years to provide support for low-income and marginalized communities when it comes to getting connected to the internet and having affordable devices and training. And Shelby led basically a statement that was presented to the Supreme Court. There was a brief that has been presented to the Supreme Court, advocating for maintaining the Universal Service Fund. This is really critical. It may not be in your normal day-to-day interactions here as a local provider in the Kansas City area, but I just wanted you to know the degree to which we in Kansas City get involved in these national issues. And we're hoping that the Supreme Court takes this brief seriously and decides to maintain the constitutionality of the Universal Service Fund. And any of you, as I said, if you have an interest in this, you can see the Shelby website and feel free to consider joining or, let me or Carrie know if you have an interest in learning more and working with the things we do at Shelby with regard to advocating for these really important issues.
Tom, do we know when that case is going to be happening?
Let's see. It is, I don't know when it's on the docket. I'm sure I can find that out, Mary Kay, but I don't have it in front of me right now. It is, I suppose, in this this current docket, but I'm not sure when it's specifically being scheduled to be heard. But at least, you know, we are part of this brief that was filed by virtue of our participation with Shelby. And as soon as I find out, I'll be happy to let you know.
Thanks.
All right. Okay. And then the last quick thing I want to share with you is a tee up of the speakers that we have with us today. So here's the way I want to do it. I want to give you just a brief overview of some of the things that I've been working on. And I got to move around all these windows so I can access my present capability.
You're doing
Okay.
great, Tom. They call it Windows for that reason.
Thank you, Ken. Okay, I'm going to try to move this guy out of the way. Okay. So I'm going to just go through a few quick slides, but it's going to allow me to introduce some of the folks, Rachel and Marcus and Brandon and Courtney and Mary Kay, some others who graciously agreed to join us today and share with us some of their challenges and opportunities with regard to digital access. And one of the things I've done with the startup of this Digital Equity Program Office, DEEP-OKC, is create something that I'm calling the Digital Equity Community Dashboard. And let me make sure I have access to its functionality. Okay. So a couple of reminders, you know, ever since COVID came, digital inclusion is something that is now federally mandated. We have a lot of ways of showcasing the recognition. I got to get rid of this window. I don't know if you guys can see that window on mine. Maybe I'll just shut it. Oops. Let me go back. The heck just happened? Yeah. I don't know what happened. My screen sharing is paused. There. Why did my screen share pause?
We can still see the definitions up.
Okay, you can.
Yes.
But I'm getting a message that my screen sharing is paused.
Are you able to advance your slides? You may want to stop sharing and restart if it seems like it's stuck.
Yep, I'll do that. Thank you. Okay. There.
Not yet.
All right, give me a second.
There.
I apologize. All right, I think I'm back.
Yep.
Back.
Okay, what will success look like? Wendy already mentioned this. Ecosystems where solutions are co-created, collaborative partnerships. We've been talking about this for many years. I know Tony Lupino's on the call. He's been one of our community's strongest advocates for collaborative partnerships. And this is not my language. This is language that's being used by the NDIA, the NTIA. This is all federally mandated now. And that's why I wanted to underscore the nature of what we're talking about today. So the work that I'm doing with the Digital Equity Program Office is now something I'm uniquely able to do. I was never able to do during the days of Connecting for Good and PCs for People, because at the end of our coalition work, you know, I had to go back and run my nonprofit just like each of you did. And now this is my sole objective. And I'm budgeted to have at least one or two people that are able to join me in the next year or two to do this work. But making sure as many nonprofits and service providing agencies that are doing this work are aware of funding and resource support opportunities and make sure they get the assistance they need to get those resources, because this is no longer work that's being done in obscurity. It is being called out as a federal mandate, and we want to make sure that those who need the resources get them. But those requests for resources have to be aligned with federal and state and local goals. And at the same time, we have to advocate and make sure that we're all accountable for how that money is being spent. And one of the things that I'm setting up to do is assist so that there's some consistency in how we collect and share data. And that's the crux of kind of the setup for today. By the way, the work that I'm doing, I provide regular reports, not only to this group at the coalition, but I've got my own board of directors. I have a number of public and private organizations that I send regular reports to, as well as working with the state and municipal governments, the community foundations, and a number of other organizations that are all interested, now that this is work that's being done in the spotlight, in how each of us are doing and how as a community we're making progress. So I'm here to advocate for you and the work that you're doing, but also to showcase the job that you do at shepherding those funds and making an impact, and even getting you more comfortable with building relationships with more and more funding partners and more organizations through which you can do your work and make impact, but on a sustainable basis. So with respect to what we're talking about now, as Amy Vandeveld said, the current grants and the one that we're going to be talking about, particularly from the state of Missouri that's active right now, comes from the Digital Equity Act. And the kind of framework that we're now all being held to the same standard for evaluation and assessment. And I know Ken and Terry Yancey at Essential Families have done a great job in their program to set these data collection categories up as part of the work they do. And I think we all have to be mindful now of, as we do our work, making sure that we're collecting data across, first of all, these 8 so-called covered populations that are represented here: aging individuals, covered households, individuals with language barriers, members of racial and ethnic minorities, veterans, individuals with disabilities, incarcerated individuals, and individuals who live in rural areas. You're not required to collect data across every one of these, but to the extent that you have data on the clients that you serve, this is the type of categorization that you need to do to be consistent with the new federal mandates. By the same token, when it comes to what are we helping these covered populations accomplish? Oops, I went one screen too far. These are the goals that are being called out from the NTIA on down, and they were particularly called out in the state of Missouri's Digital Equity Opportunity Plan. They're broad goals: economic workforce outcomes, educational outcomes, health outcomes, civic and social engagement, and delivery of essential services. And then you go, well, how do I know I'm able to collect data that will showcase what each of those 5 goals is? And this is what I wanted to just kind of end on. I'll give you one quick example, and then I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to allow our guest speakers to share what they do and the extent to which the work they're doing across some of these covered populations and towards some of these goals can share with us, and we can give each other feedback on the opportunities and challenges, not only in the work that's involved, but in the data collection and reporting that we're now being expected to do as a result of this new funding. So let me give you one example. So here's the case of aging individuals across any of those 5 goals. If you look at the State of Missouri Digital Opportunity Grant, they showcased 5 specific areas where data needs to be collected. And it doesn't have to be all of them. It could be any of them. But the degree to which, one, you can showcase that there's an increasing percentage of households that are reporting the use of a personal computer at home. You just have to show progress toward that goal. The second one is increasing the percentage of households reporting their use of the internet to access health or government services. How are you going to do that? Make that a part of how you survey your clients. Talk to them about this. Make sure that in providing them services that rely on digital means, you're helping the state to progress toward this goal. The third one is increased percentage of households using the internet for online training. That may not be for you or your program, but to the extent to which you can help people do that, you're helping the state achieve one of its stated digital opportunity goals. And you see the fourth and the fifth one there. Develop and make available training in core online skills. I know INA and others, they do this as part of their program activities, developing skill-based training that can be accessed both offline and online. And then the last one for aging individuals is reducing the percentage of smartphone-only households. You think, well, it's not so bad if I have a smartphone and I can use it. But the goal stated by the Missouri Digital Opportunity Plan is we want more people to be more comfortable getting more than just a smartphone in their house, a desktop or a laptop or something that can enable them to do things on a larger screen with a larger keyboard that enables them to access and be more productive in terms of digital connectivity. Now, with respect to the other covered populations, I'm not going to go through all the detail, but it's very similar. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here, because what you're going to be seeing from me going forward on a monthly basis is highlights of stories and data. Well, I'm not going to do one without the other, but we're going to be highlighting stories and data from service providing organizations that are helping, in this case, the state of Missouri, achieve some of these goals with some of these covered populations. You might also know, and hopefully Kim Jones will be joining us, the state of Kansas just got approval and will be opening up their digital opportunity grants in early February. So we'll be doing similar type of data collecting and reporting of both data and stories for the state of Kansas as well. But I'm going to stop sharing right now, because I think the reason we're together is to learn from each other, to hear from each other, and in no particular order, I'm going to call on a couple of people, and all we've done is ask if you can share 1 or 2 minutes about who you are and the work you do with your organization that involves, digital access means, and to what extent are the kinds of things that I just shared about a data assessment and collection and reporting framework, to what extent does that provide you opportunities and challenges going forward? Because I think if we hear from you as practitioners, we'll be able to pitch in and hopefully learn from each other. I'm gonna call Rachel. I'm gonna call on Rachel Olhausen first from Jewish Family Services, longtime participant here in the coalition, and then Rachel, when you're done, I've got a number of others that I'll be introduced and to give them a chance to share as well. But I hope you're okay with me putting you on the spot, Rachel.
Yeah.
And by the way, any questions you have for me based on what I just shared as well, share those. But hopefully you can just give us some highlights of the work you and JFS are doing.
So this is really good timing as well. I'm glad to see some of these grants around and focused on collaboration. Something that we struggled with during the pandemic was feeling like we needed to do curriculum development and education, especially for our older adults, all on our own. And I know a lot of us were reinventing the wheel for the clients who we're already connected to, because we want to decrease the number of doors that they go through. So at Jewish Family Services, we do comprehensive social services. We provide food through our pantry. We have social work for all ages. We do mental health supports and direct practice therapy. And then we also have some programs that are specific to Jewish life, but we serve everyone regardless of background. So we also have had a major reorg. I have a new role, now the Director of Program Partnerships, or some name around that to be defined in the future. But we've been in close collaboration with Casey Digital Drive, especially to make sure that we are supporting the grants and their grant making efforts nationally, and also that we'll be ready to partner with folks like everyone here so that for the clients who are at JFS receiving basic social services, I think we all know that digital literacy impacts all of them. So whether it's supporting our case managers, helping clients get access to things like food stamps, things like heating and energy assistance, being able to fill out applications, especially with the older adult population, the more access that they have at home that they can use, then that makes our social workers visits more impactful. A lot of what our social workers do is help them fill out applications, and a lot of that is because of digital barriers and just access. So that is a little bit of an overview. We also at JFS, and I think that this will probably resonate with many, we're having to right size after the pandemic. From 2020 to now, it was serve more, more, more. An example, pre-COVID, we served about 150 to 200 families per month in our pantry. Peak COVID, it was 1,000, and now we're still at about 700, and we're going to have to decrease. And we're trying to figure out how we support families and individuals in a really high impact way so that it's not just serving 700 families once a month, but it might be how do we serve families short term multiple times a month so that they can get exactly what they need to find stability. And so through all of this, digital literacy is honestly a little bit of a thread. So Tom, with some of the things and the parameters that you outlined, it'll be good to take back to understand how we're measuring that. We do a client opportunity assessment for everyone who comes through the pantry, and our social workers work on goal plans. So understanding how digital literacy is involved and then who we can reach out to partner-wise to make sure that we can get those things for the clients, because we don't have anyone on staff who's focused solely on teaching courses, getting devices, etc. So
Sure.
it's kind of where we're at, a little over 2 minutes, sorry.
No, that's great, Rachel. And first of all, congratulations on your new role. I saw some comments in the chat as well offering congratulations. And I think you bring up a really valid point. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to stress the things that I did in terms of the assessment framework, because with respect to the federal government pool of grant money, those data categories are the ones that are required as a justification for receiving some of those federal grant funds through each of the state. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're required across other funding opportunities. A good example recently, and I meant to call this out sooner, but you prompted me, is there's currently a digital opportunity grant being offered by the Health Forward Foundation. And the application deadline for that is next Wednesday, January 15th. And what the Health Forward Foundation is looking for is mainly alignment with their focus areas. And the degree to which digital equity was one of their main focus areas and pillars under their PLACE strategy. That's what they're looking for. But it doesn't supersede the need to align the data collection that you're doing with the categories that the NTIA formulated across covered populations and digital equity goals. And it also doesn't necessarily mean you have to assign a person to be responsible for specifically any expertise across those goals. It just means with respect to your fundraising, the efforts that you take to apply for grants and then report back on those grants needs to have some data collected across those categories. Again, I want to give a shout out to the work that Ken and Terry Yancey are doing at Essential Families, because they have kind of a turnkey program that provides not only digital literacy training with certified digital navigators, but new devices. And they have an automated data collection survey tool that automatically groups the data for anyone that they're helping you serve into the categories that the NTIA created. So that's just one example of how you can do this without necessarily having to change your staffing structure or anything like that. But really, really good overview, and I appreciate you going first to kick us off. We've got a number of others we want to call on, and I want to call out a gentleman that I've worked with for the past few years, Marcus Flores. He runs an organization called the Parkville Living Center and has been involved also, as you said, Rachel, working with KC Digital Drive on some of their grant programs. And Marcus, if you're okay with me putting you on the spot, I'd love for you to introduce yourself in the Parkville Living Center and like Rachel said, some of the challenges and opportunities of working in the digital space.
Sure, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I'll talk about the Parkville Living Center for a bit and get into some of those challenges. The Parkville Living Center, or the PLC, as it's locally known, is a nonprofit community center that is located in Parkville, Missouri. We were founded at the end of 2020, and our mission is to make space for the spirit of love in our community. So, as a community center, we serve people of all ages, but we have a focus on older adults, age 60 plus. We've been able to tap into the local senior fund, property tax based fund, and that's kind of what got us on this data collection funding relationship, was that initial relationship. So we offer a lot of programs, including gardening and yoga, support groups, and we also have technology education program called Tech Connect. Tech Connect's been running since 2021, and its aim is to increase digital equity among older adults. The program is free education and IT support. You see, many older adults have devices, but are reluctant to use them or lack the skills to use them effectively. So we help to address that gap by meeting the folks where they are and teaching them local basic skills, really like contextualizing locally and experientially the amazing products and curriculums that exist out there, so that we're not spending the time building that, we're spending the time relating and really hearing the stories, and then immediately falling back on this data and these curriculums that exist. And I'll talk more about that here in a second. I lead Tech Connect, and it's offered twice a week in 2-hour sessions. We also have one-on-one appointments that people can schedule. We have checkouts for community works members to have workstations and laptops, as well as workstations here on site. So, you know, we get to really engage folks along their journey. And we recognize the importance of digital literacy in older adults to fully participate in the societies that are being built and that they are used to. So we believe that digital skills help seniors connect with families and friends, doing that isolation piece, and that creates that story and data metrics there. And access essential services, you know, government and for-profit and nonprofit services, as well as combat social isolation in general, you know, through learning, through employment opportunities, and, you know, capitalism, right? But you know, so employment opportunities and the like. Now we do see a need for expanding digital inclusion efforts in the Platte County, right? That other piece, that rural piece, we're helping to kind of utilize city resources as well as collect data for the rural spaces. And so it's a really great opportunity because we provide senior services in Weston and Dearborn and northern Platte County as well. And so it's a really a great opportunity to tie a thread through these covered populations and to speak to the broad opportunities available. Now, to meet our growing need, as I talked about before, we partnered with Senior Planet, the affiliate of AARP, to enhance our Tech Connect curriculum. Now, Senior Planet provides program licensing and access to libraries and curriculums. And that allows us to focus on the trainer model and to create digital navigators in the local space through self-identified empowered leaders and taking their knowledge past themselves. But once it makes a change, it becomes reflective out. And so now we have this program that helps to guide folks to be trainers. And we plan to have 6 trainers trained this year. our first year doing it. I'm going through it in February, so I'll be able to talk more about it after then. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, we are out there to create a supportive, comfortable environment for seniors to learn and connect. And one of our biggest challenges is really that constant contextualizing and really the self-care that it takes for an organization to be able to interface the mechanics of technology with the softness of humanity. And so that's really our challenge. And we let, people own their lives and their autonomy and their direction and their passions. And we really just focus on facilitating the connections and then reporting on them to facilitate to allow for our sustainability as that intermediary piece.
Marcus, that's great. I hope you don't mind. This meeting is being recorded, and I'm gonna make sure that we share your comments along with the whole meeting with others who couldn't join us today, particularly at both state levels. I know if Dimitri Farthing hasn't joined us yet, I want to make sure that he has a chance to hear what you just articulated, and I really appreciate it. I hope you also saw the chat comments from Rachel and JFS. Strong collaboration opportunities there, even if it's just sharing notes with the work you do with the older adults. And there's a number of other older adult focused organizations that aren't on this call. I know the Palestine Senior Citizen Activity Center at Linwood and Prospect is a great organization. The Shepherd Center Central and a number of the other Shepherd Center groups. So I think across the region, Kansas City is blessed to have some great assets working in the older adult space. So thanks for sharing that. And I just want to keep us moving. And I know we have two new guests on the call today, Brandon Mims and Courtney Wells. I was pretty much blown away when I went to visit with Pastor Mims at the Metropolitan Church of Christ. This is down on 38th and Prospect. Only to find out that Brandon also works with the Ad Hoc Group Against Crime, and along with Courtney Wells, they run a nonprofit called Greater Impact KC. So Courtney and Brandon, I'm going to put you guys on the spot. Share with us a little bit about the work you do, the clients that you serve, and now that we're hopefully getting you better connected with some resources that could help expand some of your digital tools and digital access capabilities. So Brandon, Courtney, and I'll hand it over to you guys. Courtney.
Do you want to start, Pastor, and I'll fill in the gaps?
Sure, I'll go first, and then I'll introduce the real star of the show, which is Courtney. So I'll get out of her way. But yes, my name is Brandon Mims. I'm the senior pastor of Greater Metropolitan Church of Christ. Underneath Greater Metro, we have a ministry called Greater Impact, which is all things community-based. We mainly serve victims of violence through crisis case management, as well as through mental health services. So we offer free trauma and grief counseling to the community, in addition to all of the things we do as a traditional ministries of a church, like food pantries and et cetera. And then Courtney is one of our program leaders. She kind of doubles as our technology director and as well as a program coordinator for our recovery program. We have a robust addictions recovery, which she leads with a phenomenal team of individuals. And so Courtney has an extensive background working with HP and Black and Veatch in the technology field. And so one of the things we wanted to do as we expand our digital access was provide opportunity for those who come to our ministries to be able to have digital access. And I'll let Courtney talk about how she uses technology in the recovery services. But one of the things that we do as well is we offer not only in-person talk therapy with our clinical director, but we also have virtual therapy services. And so what that often looks like is someone shows up at either our main church office or one of our satellite church offices, and they're able to go into a room, and if they elect to do it virtually, they'll go into a room by themselves with one of our therapists, and we'll set them up with a laptop. And because we serve Jackson County, we're county-wide, the virtual services work great for us because they get to access one of our therapists no matter which one of our church locations or ministry locations that they go to. So I'll pitch it to Courtney.
Thank you, Pastor. And guys, sorry, I can't call him Brandon. That's Pastor Mims for me. So I thank you, and I'm so blessed to be working with him. Thank you. And as he said, yeah, my background is IT. I am retired, and I'm blessed to be able to do work on an initiative like this. As he said, with our greater recovery, it kind of folds in quite a bit, because when you just have to think of recovery and our population, it can be elderly, it can be young. And addiction does not discriminate. It doesn't matter what race you are. It doesn't matter what religion you are. If you live in a tent in the woods, or if you live in a 4,000 square foot home somewhere, it doesn't matter. So we, as we are, looking at our population right now, we serve about 500 people a month in our series of addiction recovery support groups, and then we also go out to the community. Now, we really have to use technologies because everybody can't come in person. There's even reasons why some people don't come in person. There's some marginalized populations that aren't comfortable. So when we have people can come to, as Pastor said, the church office, our satellite office, our CAN center, we're really meeting people where they are. This isn't a planned thing all the time. Sometimes we really have to have resources readily available. So one of the things we do, we provide the ability to have virtual meetings. We do the Zooms. We do this so people can meet. And that means you can meet, so you can have a meeting in New York. You can be hearing a group somewhere else, even in other countries. That's really important in recovery, because when people come out of, and our addictions are not just drug and alcohol, they are addictions of gambling. There's sex addiction, social media. There's all kinds of serious issues that really are mental health. And if you guys are familiar with the term dual diagnosis, that's very real. So when we're dealing with things like this, people need to be able to have ready access to a meeting at any time. So that's part of what we're able to offer, and it's great. Another thing that we're doing is starting to work with apps. Now, if you've also, if you know the terms, if you know anyone that's ever had an addiction, that term, one day at a time. You don't plan out. We're not doing milestone planning and things like that, but you have to have the ability to work steps, to work these programs, and these apps will do that. I bring that up because that's a challenge. As Tom said, there may be some of you that have some feedback that we might benefit from, but a lot of our clients have government phones. They're limited in the ability of things they can do. So as Pastor said, we're going to be able to have devices now in here so they can attend these, they can use these apps. But we'd really like for them to have that ability on their phones. That's a challenge for us. We'd love to get your feedback. I think in closings, the other thing that we would do with the technology, as Pastor said, we actually hold process groups. That's the mental health side, because addiction and recovery and mental health all tie together. Being able to be in a room and participating in a therapy session, in a group therapy session, that's really important. So I think we're going to be able to really impact and definitely have data behind the impact, the successes that we can help people achieve.
Courtney, that is so great. And between the work that you and Pastor Mims are doing, I mean, it really does showcase two things: not only the extent to which the digital access is a critical component of your ability to provide services, but the degree to which now, in the environment that we're working in, you have visibility, you have access to more resources than ever before. I know the Kansas City Digital Drive has been managing the Digital Inclusion Fund. Leslie and Leah, you guys, I'm going to be calling on you shortly because you have some announcement you can make of some of the awards that you've given out. But I mentioned the Health Forward Foundation grant and these federal government grants, of which, as we said, only 20% of those have been announced so far. And there's more to come. I know Dimitri Farthing from the state of Missouri is on this call now, so he'll have a chance to give us an update in just a little bit. The point is the passion with which you, and I know Marcus before you, and Rachel and others, you do your work and you articulate the importance of your work, that shouldn't stand in the way of reaching out for help with resources. You shouldn't have to, in this environment anymore, you shouldn't have to struggle to get devices, to get decent internet, to get the basic tools that you need to be able to continue to sustain and grow the impact of the work that you're doing. So thanks so much for sharing, and let's keep that going. I'm gonna just turn over to one other longtime participant with the coalition, Mary Kay Morrow and Literacy KC. And we don't want to exclude others from jumping in as well, but I know some of you may have to go as early as 11:30 or move on to other meetings. But I want to make sure we hear from Mary Kay and Literacy KC, and then possibly one or two others if you're so inclined to share with us some of these stories. So thanks again, Courtney and Pastor Mims, and Mary Kay, I'll turn it over to you.
Wow, I just am so proud of Kansas City and all the work that's being done, listening to you other speakers. It's amazing. And I look forward to working with all of you to help you reach your objectives. So Tom, it was good to see the covered populations and the broad goals. I don't know to what extent we capture that specific information, but get back to my team and try to figure out a way to make that happen, especially with our digital students. So the overall goal of Literacy KC is literacy for all. And clearly that has grown to include digital support over time. The organization started in the basement of a church in Waldo as a one-to-one adult reading program. A group of concerned citizens realized that, hey, we've got adults, 270,000 some odd adults in the Kansas City area who can't do basic reading, and we need to help them. So over the last 40 years, the organization has grown quite a bit to include adult basic education. And in 2023, we served over 800 individuals for adult basic education. And the process for that program is students come in, we test them, we find out what level they are, and then we start them in classes that work them through each step of our program until they get their high school equivalency. And I got to tell you, that graduation ceremony that we have in July is a big event. It's like an Academy Awards presentation. They're so proud of their accomplishments and what they've been able to do. Then our School of English, the adult basic ed is mostly housed at 31st and Troost in the Operation Breakthrough building currently. And then the next piece is our School of English, which served over 1,200 participants in 2023. And that's pretty self-explanatory. We're helping people learn English as their second, third, or fourth language. The workforce development team is very active and growing. So we also provide or partner with other organizations to provide specialized training in the area of food preparation, forklift driving, certified nursing assistants, and so forth. So digital is the fourth of the big categories, and we are part of all the other programs. We're embedded into the other programs because our students have to learn how to use specialized programs in the areas of their study. And then they also just need to learn how to use the computer. So the digital program, we serve students at the Troost campus, at the I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought, at the School of English. And we also have a class now down at the Department of Corrections Transition Center of Kansas City. So that's one of the covered populations that's important.
That's in the West Bottoms, right?
In the West Bottoms, yeah, not far from the old PCs for People building, which is still there, yeah. all of our classes are virtual and in person. Trying to think, are there any questions from anyone?
Well, and I welcome everyone to use the chat function. I know I'm gonna want to hand it back to Wendy here in just a second because we have our state broadband office representatives that are scheduled to share some updates. But Mary Kay, thanks for sharing that overview of Literacy KC. And if you do have a question for not only for Mary Kay or Pastor Mims, Courtney Wells, Rachel Olhouse, and Marcus Flores, please for now use the chat function. And then when we have some time before the end of the meeting, which I think we will, we'll be able to do some face-to-face Q&A. Is that okay?
Yeah. So
thanks again for sharing, Mary Kay. And Ike Graham, I know you're on the call. There's a number of others. We didn't pre-schedule for you to make comments, but hopefully we'll have time for you guys to pitch in as well. But like I said, I know Dimitri Farthing's on the call, and I don't know, I haven't checked my participant list if Kim has joined or not, but I'm going to hand it back over to Wendy Pearson so we can all get an update from our state broadband officials. So thanks everyone, and hold your place in case there's more Q&A before the end of the meeting.
Thank you, Tom, and especially also thank you to all of our practitioners. It was really wonderful to hear everything. And Dimitri, are you available to give us a few minutes of your time and present any updates from the Missouri Office of Broadband Development?
Yes, I am here and happy to talk. Was honestly wishing I had more to say, truthfully. We've really just been, head down trying to get through our reviews of the applications that we got for our Digital Opportunity Grant Program for fiscal year 2025. I'm sorry, I've spoken to quite a few groups, so please help me out here. Have I given you all a general update on those applications?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, then I will do that, and we'll say that's the extent of my update. So, we had a really enthusiastic response to our Digital Opportunity Grant Program. I would say we got many more applications than we thought we would. And while that's certainly a good thing, it also means that we have requests for funding that far exceed anything that we can actually, or the amount of funds we have available to deploy. So to give you all an idea of what that was like, we were kind of expecting somewhere in the realm of 20 to 30 total applications. And at the end of the day, we got 41. So we definitely surpassed that. The breakdown is 9 projects or 9 applications for a statewide project, leaving us 32 applications concerning local projects. And at the end of the day, I believe our total requests, this is both statewide and local, total requests summed up to $53 million. So $53 million in requests for a pot of, excuse me, $13 million. Right, $3 million for our local projects, $10 million for our statewide. And so frankly, we've had a lot of hard decisions, I want to say, and I saw that several folks on this call have submitted applications themselves. They are very, very competitive. Every project is really, really good. It's truly become very difficult for us to narrow down. We know we have some tough decisions to make, but we're hoping we can do that, and that the projects we do select are those that will deliver the the best results for the state of Missouri. I know for our applicants, you should have gotten an update from me this week that we are hoping, fingers crossed, hoping. I said this before, and we ended up having to delay. So we're hoping to have decisions made no later than 2 weeks from today, no later than 14 days from today. But again, that is dependent on, whether or not we receive further guidance from NTIA. And then, of course, any projects that are selected will be subject to final approval by NTIA, and we expect that approval process to take somewhere between 30 and 90 business days. But I think that sums up all my updates. Happy to answer any questions if there are some, but if not, hand it back to the coalition leaders.
Dimitri, this is Tom. Thanks for pitching in. I know we kind of put you on the spot where you didn't have a ton of information to share, but that was really a helpful insight that you provided about the number of applications and the total dollar amount of requests compared to what you had to offer. And I think as we learned from previous updates that Aaron Deacon has given us about similar statistics concerning the Kansas City Digital Inclusion Fund, it's a good way to showcase the amount of need that there is out in the community that continues to exceed the amount of resources that are available from any one source. And that's the point I wanted to call out by virtue of your comments, that this organization and all of you on this call and your peers and associates that you work with who aren't on this call, I mean, we have an obligation to continue to reach out to each other and to form relationships with other funding organizations and other civic leadership groups so we can continue to highlight the needs that any one organization just simply can't do on its own. And the other thing I wanted to ask you a quick question about, JR, is I don't know if you were on when I was just reviewing some of the data collection and reporting categories, and I know they were spelled out pretty clearly in the funding opportunity notices, and it has caused some consternation from people because they don't necessarily do their programs saying, oh, we are set up to gather data against these 8 covered populations and against these 5 digital equity goals. But at the same time, I think the goals are broadly enough stated that, and there's enough specificity about the progress against things like the percentage of households that have a computer at home instead of just a smartphone and different things like that, that we're hoping won't be too cumbersome for practitioners to be able to gather that data. I didn't know if you had any comments or insights you could share with this group, just concerning, when after the awards are made, the degree to which that data collection and reporting aligns back against those goals and those requirements.
Yeah, I'll provide what comment I can. I think one, we certainly don't want to make things difficult for digital equity practitioners, right? We recognize that you all work in a vital space and you've got a million other things to worry about, right? And making sure you collect every single data point about the populations you serve certainly is not one of the priorities when there's so much need. But I want to make it like I want to be clear that we tried to make this as approachable as we could, as easy as we could. But there were certain federal requirements that we had to comply with, right? And so if we aren't able to comply with it, then that means none of this funding comes to the state, right? So we're ultimately working in support of the big picture, right? We don't want to put these burdensome requirements on folks, but it allows us to maintain compliance with our federal partners and ensures and sets us up for success in the long run. And then the second thing I want to add to that is having that data helps us in the sense that we know the Digital Equity Act will eventually end, right? These programs have end dates, 5 years. But when we want to make an argument, when we go to legislators, when we go to the higher ups who decide where funding goes in the state, and we want to say, hey, can you give us, an additional $5-10 million for digital opportunity work? They're going to say, well, why should we? And then that's where we pull out the data, right? This is where we say, well, look, 25% more Missourians have a computer, and that represents, real sustainable economic growth for the state. And so, that's what I really want to stress. The data gives us something to go to our legislators, to go to our decision makers, and fight to use to fight for, I think.
Yeah. Thank you. That was an awesome response. Because when I was trying to tee up the need for this data collection and reporting framework, it's all contingent upon the fact that we now have what, $13-14 million coming in the state of Missouri coming toward supportive resources for this work that we wouldn't have had without these data categories being part of the picture. So it's not designed to be cumbersome, but it's designed to provide a base of impact data from which we can actually sustain and grow future funding opportunities. And I know all the nonprofits I'm working with, I try to get that point across, that it's not designed to tie your hands. It's just designed to help the broader organizations at the local and state and federal level to, you know, have a consistent framework for showcasing why funding makes a difference. And if we all have a, you know, a common impact story that we can share across data points like this, then it's easier to build support for future funding opportunities, you know, from a variety of different organizations. So I so appreciate your thoughtful response on that, and want to send it back to Wendy, because Wendy, I know there's others on the call who may have questions or comments that they'd like to make to further our discussion, but I want to send it back to you so you can kind of navigate from those others. But JR, thanks for your comments.
Yes. Thank you very much. Oh, Tony Lupino has just raised his hand. Floor is yours, Tony.
I didn't want to jump the line if you have others who are.
Oh,
Yeah.
you messed up.
Okay, first of all, this has been great, and it's been great to see a lot of new faces here, I think, recently added to the group. As Tom mentioned, at UMKC and across the UM system, for several years now, we've been promoting and trying to facilitate coordination and raising awareness of what everybody does. And so I'm going to, a lot of you have seen this before, but some may not have. We launched the UM system, the Mo Broadband website, in June of 2020, I think. And it's got a lot on it. I'm not going to try to itemize it here, but the first one in this chat is how to get your organization identified in a digital asset map that had support from the Missouri Office of Broadband Development, from JR's office. Some of the other tools on it include some pretty interesting free resources to do data mapping, and there's some data maps already in there that have to do with broadband across the state of Missouri. And there's an internet speed test, there's a needs assessment tool. It's pretty interesting. We've talked before about we could collaborate to build something locally, but we could also, because SourceLink's involved in the website, we have ways to do geographical filters if somebody wanted to say programs within so many miles and like that. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of the tool.
I don't see where to raise my hand, but I'm trying to. Can I ask a question here, Tom and Wendy?
Go ahead, Ken. Yeah.
Yeah. So Tom, very impressive. Your digital equity community dashboard. I like the perception of it. I just need to know what's behind it in terms of a framework and architecture, in terms of submitting data to you. So how does an organization actually submit data? Are you looking for CSV files, API, SDK, webhooks? How are you actually collecting the data from these various nonprofits?
Well, thanks for your question, Kenneth. So just to be clear, and I cut short some of the slides that I presented to you in that community dashboard presentation deck that I had. The one I want to focus on, though, is where I talked about the stakeholder groups that I share reports with. And, you know, quite frankly, I just have a grid, and it's a grid that goes by county, because we have two kind of county reporting frameworks that I work with. One is the Mid-America Regional Council, which covers 4 counties in Kansas and 5 in Missouri. And then also the Health Forward Foundation, which has evolved to be the largest of the major foundations in Kansas City, at least with respect to digital inclusion funding. And they include all of the 9 MARC counties, as well as a couple of additional counties in both Kansas and Missouri, for instance, Lafayette County in Missouri. And so on a monthly basis, at a minimum, I may do some or more than that and some less than monthly. I'm just creating highlights that revolve around the data that gets reported to me willingly by different practitioner groups, such as the ones you've heard from today. And this grid that I've created is meant to be a reporting framework that offers both data, impact data, against those categories of covered populations, as well as those digital equity goals, you know, education outcomes, employment outcomes, et cetera. But it's supplemented by testimonials. It could be a video, it could be a slideshow. It could be, you know, a written testimonial or just photos that the nonprofit agencies are willing to share as part of their reporting back on how they have received funding awards and how they're using those awards to not only generate impact, but to share it with the community so that we can make sure that community-wide, we're not, well, there's always gonna be gaps, but we need to try as hard as we can to identify and share stories so that if some group sees it and says, hey, wait a second, I'm doing work with that population, but I wasn't aware that I could get resources to help me. That's, I think, why a coalition spending 90 minutes once a month doing what we're doing, that's where and how we can really showcase the power of collaboration. So to your point, and I've called you and the Essential Families Framework out a couple of times already in this meeting. You know, you've got that data background. You've created something that really already auto-populates by virtue of how you work with your clients into those data collection categories that are called out by the state. That's huge. And as many groups as you can work with, that'll make that part of the data reporting story so much easier. But others may not have that capacity yet, and whether they work with you or not, they still have a great opportunity to showcase just through their stories and through whatever data that they're willing to share, how they're using that funding to really sustain the impact over time and help as a community, help make sure we're really filling those gaps. So I hope
Yeah.
that's an acceptable response. I'm
Yes.
not trying to create any data reporting requirements that are outside the reach of even the smallest of the agencies. But I also don't want to preclude, you know, the kind of work that you're doing. You know, I can't wait to help highlight the data collecting stories that you and Essential Families are doing too, because, you know, we are about advocating for people who are doing the work and collecting the data, but we're also advocating to get people at the table who otherwise may not have had a chance. And I know groups like what Courtney Wells and Brandon Mims from the Metropolitan Church of Christ, it was such a revelation to me when I saw their facility at 38th and Prospect, and when I realized how much work they do in the digital space, but we'd never had a chance to see them in a coalition meeting before. And I hope this can lead to more and more resources coming to groups like theirs and many others throughout the region.
Great response. Yeah. So anything we can do, Tom, as always, we're here to help. We're here to share. And again, we just have a lot of data. And again, it's not, it wasn't hard to really collect the data and to analyze the data. But let me just say this. I go back to one thing I want to add to what you said. The data collection, it's easier. This is just sharing with everybody. Data collection is easier if you set up what we call key performance indicators, right? In other words, you set these KPIs up. And so when people come into your facilities or online, you know, there's a pre-assessment, right? When they first get there, in other words, create the baseline. And then there's a post-assessment when they leave. That creates a measurable, right, data collection analysis. I just want to share that with folks because, again, back to Dimitri and what you're saying, you got to have data to get the dollars. You have to have data. You have to. That's just my opinion. I'll be quiet, Tom.
No, that's good. I appreciate you sharing. And Wendy, if you don't mind, I mentioned this earlier, but I'd love to hear from either Leslie, Leah. I don't know if Aaron's on the call. The Kansas City Digital Drive has probably gotten exposure to a greater number of nonprofits doing work in the space and seeking funding through the Digital Inclusion Fund. And I didn't know if you guys, you know, were comfortable kind of making any announcements or just sharing some insights based on what we've been sharing so far.
Do you mind if I jump in just a second, though? We did have somebody raise their hand. Laura Stockton, would you like to go? We hand it over to.
Sure. Sorry about that, Wendy.
no
I apologize,
no
Laura.
problem.
I didn't notice that.
That's okay. It was just kind of feeding off of what Mr. Yancey had said. When we, on a kind of a smaller scale, when it comes to collecting the data, I know it seems overwhelming. We just tell everybody who comes in, because we get a lot of transient populations at Goodwill. We tell them all that this is what you have to do to get the services. So they have to give us their racial information, their situational barriers, we call them, in order to get the services. And since it's digital inclusion, just a piece of that, they generally want it. And so they're willing to provide us with things that they might be uncomfortable with otherwise.
Great.
That,
So,
that's a
yeah.
that's a really great insight.
Awesome.
Wendy.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
You bet. You bet.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry,
Yeah.
Wendy.
Yeah, we can kick it right on over. See if Leslie would you like to provide some updates?
Sure. I'm gonna stall maybe while Leah puts some numbers together, but just to the point about data, data is the order of the day, and we'll be putting together a robust data capturing infrastructure together for Digital Life Exchange, which was the name we had to give the proposal for the NTIA nationally competitive grant, but we're still very hopeful and optimistic about that outcome. But regardless, that's really just the way that we've done business, over the last 11, 12 years. And we have a few people on the call here who were included in that that proposal. But regardless of that outcome, that's just how we do things. We connect organizations. We look for synergies and collaborations. We all know that talked about the need greatly always outweighs the resources. So being able to do more together, so we can be more efficient with the resources that we do have, just makes sense to us and our partners. So that's just a bit about data. I put in the chat that we were congratulating Parkville Living Center on a digital inclusion fund award for new courses. So the independent reviewers recommended for award. How many organizations in this last? See, this is what happens when you have an independent process. You're a little bit removed from it. So Leah, do you want to dive in on the number of applicants so far, and also the number of awards for the new courses?
Yeah, for sure. So we received 9 applications, if I'm remembering correctly, for new courses.
Can you speak up? It's hard to hear you.
Yes. So we received 9 applications for the new courses and have awarded 5. We'll make sure to update our website, but I shared that link in the chat. But yeah, essentially, like I said in the chat, we are analyzing all 3 cycles that we released. They were related to, the first one was about devices. So any client serving organization could apply to receive devices for their clients. The next one was IT support. So creative ideas for IT support and supporting your clients with those devices. And then the third one was new courses. So any sort of new and innovative and creative digital skills classes. And so we had a really great, I would say, applicant pool. There were so many, we were able to analyze kind of how much need there was in the community. So we're really excited that we were able to lead this application fund, and we continue to sort of analyze the results for that, so we can better able to support our ecosystem. But yeah, take a look on the website if you have any questions about that.
You want to give the 5 awardees that the reviewers recommended?
Sure. Yeah. So the 5 that were awarded for the new courses were Goodwill, Metropolitan Community College, Parkville Living Center, Welcome Wellness Health Education Resource Center, and World Builders Academy. So
There you go.
congratulations.
You heard it here first, folks.
I'm not familiar with World Builders Academy. Can you share more about who they are?
So they are relatively new, but I can share their website down here. But essentially, they help support school age folks. And to build their confidence, competence, and resourcefulness to affect positive change in their communities. That's what their mission is all about. But they help to serve and support early education centers, primary school, and workforce development organizations.
That's awesome. And you mentioned Goodwill, and we heard from Laura. Metropolitan Community College. I don't know if we have any MCC folks on the call. I know I have a gentleman named Stephen Norton, who's the head of diversity, equity, and inclusion as one of my board members at MCC. So I'm thrilled to hear that they got some resources for new courses. The Welcome Wellness Center, that's out in Belton. Many of you might know Janine Majette, who used to be with the First Hand Foundation when it was part of Cerner. And now she's running that Welcome Wellness Center. That's thrilling to hear too, that she got, her organization got an award. So just more, as Mary Kay said, more evidence of the tremendous breadth of assets, organizational assets we have throughout the community, you guys, in doing this work. And you know, going back to what Dimitri said, there's more work requiring more resources than any one organization can provide. And so the more we can do to showcase each other and what we're doing and how we're getting impact being made across all those covered populations and all those digital equity goals, it's the only way we can demonstrate, particularly to the federal government. It doesn't matter what happens with administrations changing in and out. We're the local soldiers that are doing this work to make sure that no one is denied access to affordable internet and devices and training. So I appreciate, Leah, you and Leslie giving updates, because you know, KC Digital Drive is one of those major assets that we're lucky to have to help make sure as many organizations as possible get the recognition and the resources that they need. So pretty awesome. All right, I'm done with my statements, and thanks and congratulations to everybody who agreed to join us. Wendy, I want to hand it back to you because we still have 5 or so minutes in case there's other announcements and things you want to rally the troops around for.
I actually, you know, I've been on the agenda a few times, but we've run out of time every time. So I'm going to force it since we have, 5 minutes left. I do want to spend, I think I can do it in a minute or less, a little bit of time walking everyone through the new coalition website. Let's see, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm not going to walk you through every single page. There are 2 things that I do want to specifically guide you through here, but you'll see that I've worked with David LaCrone, who many of you probably know, one of my colleagues from the library here, to rebuild a website. We hadn't really updated it since the pandemic, and so now we've completely overhauled it, built it from scratch, made it very simple. You'll see on our landing page, the URL is exactly the same as it's always been. And just spend some time, if you have a few minutes here and there, going through our various little menus and pages. But the 2 things I want to focus on with you today are our calendar of events and our member profiles. So you'll see the calendar. If you go to that page, you can actually submit a calendar event. And if you have some sort of community event coming up, you can submit an event. It'll ask you obviously for all these details. And then it comes through us, very brief approval process. Really, it's just me or David looks through it and makes sure it's legit, not some kind of weird spam. And then it's posted live within, 1 business day of you submitting it. So pretty simple there. And then get help. Going back to our main home screen, you can access this get help from 2 different spaces here. You'll see either the box or the menu item. And this is really designed for us as a coalition to get a hold of each other. And then also for folks that we're trying to serve, our end users really, can come in here and isolate whatever it is they're looking for, whatever community resource they need, and do a search based on, our tags here. And what I need your help with is going through and making sure that your profile is and your representation is accurate. So we can, let's see. There are 2 ways to do it. You can either become a member from the homepage. If you find that your profile information is way outdated and it's just easier to start over, go ahead and become a coalition member and fill out that form. Whatever you post here will be posted on your profile page, which I'll just choose Hastings Village. It gives you a short, brief overview of the organization, the website, the contact information for the person at that organization, and how to get in touch with those people. So if you have a profile, please review its accuracy. You can either, if you just have a few minor changes, just email me and I can make those for you. But if you have really just want to start over, just go ahead to the homepage again, become a coalition member, and find that web form and create your profile over again. And then we'll just go ahead and delete your old one. There was one more thing I wanted to share as well. There is a news page. So if you have some really exciting announcement that you would like to share about your organization, you can actually submit sorry, I don't know. I'll have to go back and I'll include the instructions in detail in our follow-up newsletter for this meeting. But there is a way for you to also submit some sort of news item if that's something you'd like to share as well. So I will, for the sake of time, we have 1 minute left. Sorry for taking probably a little more than a minute than I anticipated. I do want to see if anyone has some very last minute announcements or things that, you'd like to share, or questions even before we part ways today.
We are offering and starting classes in February. We will offer a Set 365, Google Workspace, email basis for business and subset. We're starting with Kaufman Trust Track in March, and how to move business to the cloud. Those are the classes that we are offering from February and March.
That's great, Gabrielle.
All right. Do we have any other announcements or questions? All right. Right on time then. I would like to share that our next meeting is our regular first Friday in February. It'll be via Zoom. That's February 7th. If you don't have the calendar invitations, please just email me directly and I'll be sure you get on the list so you get our updates moving forward. And if no one has anything else, please have a wonderful weekend and we'll hopefully see you next month.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you.
Go Chiefs.
Thanks,
Okay.
everyone.
Great job, everybody. Great information. Great job. Time well spent. Thank you.
And congratulations, yes.
Thanks, Wendy.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.